All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for today's virtual coffee break. Before we get started, we're going to go through just a few housekeeping tips and reminders here. If you have any questions, this is pretty open, so feel free to type them in the Q&A or the chat box at any time during the presentation. For everything else, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call, sales@tristaterestores.com. We are recording, and links to view the video and a link to view the PDF of the presentation will be shared with everybody tomorrow morning through their Zoom follow-up email. Visit our YouTube channel at Tri-State Restores for a complete archive of all of these coffee break presentations. 10 lucky attendees today will get a $5 Starbucks card. Stay to the end to find out how. And after the coffee break, please complete the post-event survey and share the topics you'd like us to cover in our next coffee break. We will be back at you the last Wednesday of the month next month, September 24th. And stay to the end. One lucky attendee is going to walk home today with a $50 Amazon gift card. So who we are a family-owned, locally operated, established firm. Tri-State is an independent commercial and residential disaster recovery firm based here in the DC metropolitan area. We specialize in mitigation, remediation, removal, cleanup, and restoration efforts of both large and small water, fire, mold, biohazard, lead, and odor caused damages. Our company's mission is turning disaster into peace of mind because we're committed to easing the burden of handling your property disaster by providing you with the best customer service and experience possible. Good morning, everybody. So happy to see so many familiar faces. Thank you guys for joining me today. Just again, our suite of services, we help people out with water mitigation and restoration efforts, mold remediation and lead abatement, fire and smoke restoration and odor control, biohazard and trauma disinfection, sewage mitigation, and cleanup efforts. We are an ICRC certified firm, EPA lead safe firm, IQA smart mold firm, and we're 5-star rated across all the sites that count. All of our employees are infectious disease certified and water restoration technician certified. We also have 2 licensed asbestos inspectors on staff. We also belong to all these wonderful organizations, and I like to shout out the multifamily associations we belong to. The Property Management Association, we're members of 2 chapters of the Community Associations Institute and AYOBA. So before we get started, I always like to shout out my boss and show off what a hero he is to us and our company. Mark Wilson was recently featured on ABC7's Good Morning Washington, where he was able to share his passion for turning disaster into peace of mind. This actually aired 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to share the video with everybody. So hang tight. We'll get started right after this.
This segment is sponsored by Tri-State Restorations.
Tri-State Restorations has been helping families and businesses right here in the DMV for over 25 years. We are joined now by the owner and CEO, Mark Wilson. Wonderful to have you here with us.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I want to start with the fact that you guys are on call 24/7. And I really want to talk about this because when somebody calls and they've had a disaster in their home, whether it's flooding or a burst pipe of some sort, someone from your team answers the phone, not a call center, someone from your team.
Right. Yeah, when somebody's experiencing a disaster, it's definitely a hardship. It's an emergency. People are frantic. Time is money, and people want this cleaned up. So yeah, we have somebody always on call within our company that when you have a disaster, you call in, you press 1 if it's after hours, and a live team member answers the phone. And what's great about that is you're not getting a scripted answering service. You're getting a professional team member who can answer higher level questions and help you through your loss.
Yeah, because these are high stress situations, sensitive situations. When these things happen, they really disrupt families, businesses, and homes. So
Absolutely.
To get answers right away, that's so important. What sets your team apart from everyone else in these high stress and sensitive situations?
Well, a big part of it is a continuity. So having a team that's been with you for several years, like we've been in business since since 2007. And we definitely have a team that's been with us many, many years. And then training, continuous training as the industry evolves with different things, insurance, restoration in general. You always have to have up-to-date training. And so we're always striving to do that.
So walk us through the whole process when your team comes in and kind of what sets you apart in that restoration process.
Again, acting quickly. So the call to action, somebody's calling us, you're reaching a live team member. You're sending out qualified, trained individuals, and then they're caring. So they're going to protect your home and your assets and valuables, and just the equipment and the whole process going through start to finish. We're able to answer questions on the fly. We're not using subcontractors. These are real people, real employees employed with the company that have the knowledge to, turn your disaster into peace of mind.
Yeah. Your company is family owned, locally operated. Talk about how important that is to you as a business operator here in the DMV and how that really helps when you're responding to these emergencies.
Absolutely. So we're very connected with the community. I grew up in the community from the area. My wife and I have 6 kids together. So we've built our business with our kids and the family. And that allows us to have a more intimate experience with our customers and have a lot more empathy for what they're going through, I think.
Yeah, well, it's so important to trust a local company and to get those answers right away when sometimes you're in the worst situation in your home or business. How can people get a hold of you?
There's many different ways, but just calling our 800 number is the direct way. Social media, we have a website, we have live chat. There's just various ways to reach us.
Tri-State Restorations. Mark, so great to see you.
Thank you.
Isn't that pretty cool, guys? So I had to show off. So we love that experience. This is actually gonna happen again. Mark's not my only superstar here. Miss Tara, the other half and the other arm of the business, she's actually also going to be featured on Good Morning Washington here in a few weeks. So hopefully by next month's coffee break, I'll be able to share that with you guys as well. So let's get into it. From chaos to calm, hoarding and heavy contents unpacked. This is a bit of a tough subject, but it's important to go through it, and it's really important to understand kind of the processes we take to ensure we're leaving people with a safe and healthy home to occupy when we're done. So, what is hoarding? People with a hoarding disorder have persistent difficulty getting rid of or parting with possessions due to a perceived need to save these items. This is considered a mental illness. Attempts to part with possessions create considerable distress and lead to decisions to save them. The resulting clutter disrupts the ability to use living spaces. Hoarding is not the same as collecting. Collectors, or avid collectors, as we call them in the industry, typically acquire possessions in an organized, intentional, and targeted fashion. Think like stamp collectors, baseball cards, that sort of thing. Once acquired, these items are removed from normal usage, but are subject to being organized, admired, and displayed to others. Acquisition of objects and people who hoard is largely impulsive, with little active planning, and triggered by the sight of an object that could be owned. Objects acquired by people with hoarding lack a consistent theme, whereas those of collectors are narrowly focused on a particular topic. In contrast, the organization and display of possessions seen in collecting, disorganized clutter is a hallmark of hoarding disaster or disorder. So the DSM-5, that is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, says that the key characteristics of hoarding are defined. This is our definition used by restoration professionals as difficulty discarding, an ongoing and persistent struggle to part with possessions, excessive accumulation, an overabundance of items that congest and clutter living areas, making them unusable for their intended purpose. Significant distress. The hoarding behavior causes clinically significant distress or impairment in a person's social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And then health and safety risks, which is the biggest part for us in today's conversation. The accumulation of clutter creates hazards such as fire risks, blocked exits, and unsanitary conditions that can harbor mold, pests, and bacteria. So hoarding versus avid collecting. While both hoarding and avid collecting involve accumulating items, there are very crucial distinctions between the two behaviors. Avid collector engages in deliberate and organized pursuit of specific items, whereas a hoarder experiences a compulsive drive to save possessions. Avid collecting is characterized by selectivity, focus on specific items such as stamps, coins, books, or sports memorabilia. There's organization to it. The collections are often well organized and maintained in displays or stored in designated spaces. For the enjoyment and purpose, the collector derives satisfaction from acquiring and organizing and displaying the items, and may even consider themselves an investor. Minimal impairment, the hobby typically doesn't negatively impact the collector's daily life, finances, relationships, or living spaces. Whereas hoarding, on the other hand, is considered a mental health disorder characterized by difficulty discarding, persistent difficulty parting with possessions, regardless of their actual value. The urge to acquire items often free or of low value without a plan or available space. Accumulation of possessions that clutter and congest living spaces, making them unusable and unsafe for their intended purpose. Hoarding causes significant distress or impairment in the person's life, impacting relationships, social functioning, and the safety and sanitation of their home. Strong emotional attachment to possessions, often fueled by beliefs that the items may be useful or have sentimental value in the future. I think we all have that junk drawer in our house where we keep all the little things that we say to ourselves, oh, this is going to be useful at some point. I would not consider that hoarding, but if your entire home is in that situation, just like that junk drawer, you're probably more on the hoarding side of the spectrum. So here's a nice fun poll for everybody to participate. Based on the definitions I've just shared with you, which one would you put into which category? And you guys can go on ahead and share that in the chat. A, hoarding, B, collecting. Awesome. Awesome. Good job, guys. You guys are paying attention. Yep. So while B is actually, it's kind of on the cusp. I put this one in here as kind of a trick gotcha question. B, this home actually, there were very small aisles you could walk through. You could still make it to an exit in a timely manner, but I would still consider that a fire hazard. B is a fun knitter with a purchasing. Yes, yes, ma'am, she was. Yes, it's a lot organized, but maybe a fire hazard. Yep, because the outlets are covered, because maybe the sprinkler system couldn't activate because something was blocking it from detecting the smoke or the heat in the environment. All different kinds of things. But that is the category we would lump them in. A would be considered hoarder and B avid collecting.
Well, hoarding is actually the acquiring and the failure to discard things of useless value. And they acquire for a long time and may get into the way of normal day-to-day activities. Well, it's a problem for people who are in the fire service. It's a problem to the residents who live in a house where there is hoarding. And the real problem is the accumulation of things that might be near a heating source. You could have things stored on top of radiators. You could have things stored near candles, near heaters, near fireplaces. So it's really things that might be stored in a basement near the furnace, too near furnaces. That's one of the problems. The second problem is when responding to a fire, it might be more difficult for a firefighter to get in a door that's blocked. There may be more hazards of being trapped in that fire if that firefighter was going to leave. And for the resident themselves, it's a problem because it might impede them getting out in a fire. Could block exits, could block windows that might be used as a secondary exit. So they could trip over these things on the way out. So it's going to delay their getting out in a fire. There's some other things that you have to look at as well, and that is other kinds of hazards that fire service people respond to, like falls. If you have all kinds of things around on the floor, it's much easier to fall and trip on them. There could be falling objects that fall and hit somebody on the head because they're not stored properly. So these are things that emergency service personnel would also need to respond to.
So this is the perspective from the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Agency. She makes some really, really fair points. Now that we understand that side of it and we look at both of these images, it would be really scary to have to respond to a fire in this home, and to ensure the accurate, safety of everyone getting out. So, in essence, neither one is really that great when it comes to restoration. It really all kind of depends on the collection that the person has obtained. So here's an example of what happens with excess contents during a major fire loss. This is actually the DC Fire and EMS Department's Twitter page. This is the loss that we responded to, the 2500 block of Q Street Northwest. There was one adult male with serious injuries. It was in the second floor apartment of a 5-story mid-rise condo community in DC. And let's get into it. So we received the call at 9 p.m. on December 21st from a local community manager, letting us know that one of her residents unintentionally started a fire in the building, and EMS were on site extracting the individual and putting out the blaze in multiple units. The unit owner, when found, was unconscious and taken to a nearby hospital. He unfortunately never recovered from his injuries. There were 8 total units affected. When we arrived on site, we were not only able to help tackle the fire and water damages, but also contents. So this is the source unit. Upon entry, you can see the door barely opens. This is what the unit looked like when we first arrived. We set these lights up so we could take the photos here. But as you can see, hardly any way for you to successfully get out of this unit if it was completely engulfed in smoke. It would have been very, very hazardous, and unfortunately was for this unit owner. This is where the origin was in the kitchen. This is the state of the kitchen on arrival. And this is, as we're going through it, we're starting to remove all the contents, but you can see the substantial char and smoke damage on everything in this unit. This is post remediation here. We pulled down all affected materials. This is prior to us cleaning these plaster walls. And how do we handle contents disposal? Well, this community, in their bylaws, we weren't able to bring anything through the common areas of this building. So we designed a chute system where we'd be able to kind of drop everything out here and then load it into a roll-off bin that was street side. And here's another example. This is a trauma cleanup. The elephant in the room always in these coffee break presentations, but it's very important for you guys to know and understand the process. So this was odor, trauma mitigation, and contents pack out with disposal. This case study is from Leisure World in Maryland. Our customer, who lives in Florida, owns this condo and had rented it out to a lovely gentleman who unfortunately passed away of natural causes inside of his unit. His closest next of kin was in Colorado, and it had unfortunately been several weeks before his body was found due to a well check from other business residents reporting a very strong odor. We were called out to assist with the remaining bodily fluids, odor, and contents. Our main focus for this job was disposing all of the residents' contents according to his next of kin's wishes, mitigating the affected areas, and assisting with bloodborne pathogen cleanup, odor control, and air quality. So you can see, I mean, it had been several weeks since his passing. There were already flies everywhere. This is what the unit looked like when we arrived. It was a lot of heavy contents, not really any organization to it. This was the bedroom, which was being used as kind of storage for this person. This is a before, and this is an after of the environment. And then here's a before, a during, and an after. And this one is probably the most startling before and after. This was the kitchen area when we arrived, and this is the after. So our team does amazing work. We just took a lot of care and consideration with these. Obviously, whenever there's a death involved, we just want to make sure that the family knows we're there for them every step of the way. And we try to walk through and explain and set expectations. This is how this process typically goes. Here are your options. Options are always good. And we, let them kind of run with it. How would you like us to proceed? So in this instance, we ended up disposing of all contents and cleaning out the unit and getting it prepped and ready for this unit owner to rent again. Then at the end here, you can see all the nice clean walls and the environment is nice and safe. And then we also do a disinfection fogging and odor control fogging at the very end. And so I'm going to throw in this community safety tip here because it's just very relevant. Because this particular resident, was found deceased several weeks after his parting. Our pro tip for community managers is to remind your residents if you see something or smell something, say something. We always strive to promote having a annual or biannual community day within your community to encourage residents to meet and mingle with one another. You kind of get to know everybody's habits. Everybody knows, when their neighbor comes home from work or leaves. The more you know your neighbors, the more you're able to help spot red flags in their behavior to help them out when they need you most. We called this house the dollhouse. Customer noticed an increase in groundwater. Her sub pump started running every hour back in June. She spent Christmas with her friends, but when she returned around 11 p.m., she heard her sub pump running every 5 minutes. The next morning, her neighbor 2 doors down rang her doorbell, very upset. The townhome between them had a pipe that had burst and water was coming into both of their townhomes. She went into her basement and found about a 1/4 inch of standing water. She was able to get in touch with the source unit owner's property manager, and they turned off the water, stopped the hemorrhaging, and in her unit specifically, vinyl and ceramic flooring in the basement were affected. Team Tri-State came out immediately to help mitigate and save the day. So here's a quick video that walks through all the contents. But she not only was an avid knitter and crocheter, she also had a fondness for dolls. So as you can see here, it's some very tight spaces, but very organized. Very clear pathways through here. This was definitely an Avid-Collector. And what we did with her, we were able to pack out all of her content, store it on an off-site facility that was temperature controlled, environment controlled. And that way we were able to make sure we kept her valuable collection safe while we accessed the areas that needed mitigation. Okay. So how do we approach a job site like this? No, not with Sage. We kind of go through our 5-step protocol here. We've got our initial assessment and triage. That's when our team is conducting a thorough inspection of the affected areas, identifying safety hazards, blocked exits, structural risks, biohazards, or vermin. We document the conditions with photos and notes for the property owner and the insurance carrier. We establish immediate priorities, meaning the health and safety, structural stabilization, and accessibility. We can't mitigate if we don't have access to the areas that require our services, in essence. Then we go through a hazard mitigation and site safety walkthrough. We're implementing controls to reduce immediate risks, ensuring that we've got the proper PPE for our workers, temporary shoring, cleared, blocked, egress paths, etc. Basically, can our guys get in and out safely? Can we properly mitigate safely? What do we need in order to make this process a success? We coordinate with appropriate professionals if hazardous materials, biohazards, or compromised utilities are present. And we ensure the environment is safe enough for both workers and occupants during the mitigation process by setting up containments and air quality equipment. Then we go through content management and stabilization. We're segregating and staging contents to allow access for mitigation while respecting the client's personal property. This often means packing things out and storing at a separate location while the property begins its mitigation journey. Clearly identifying and separating unsalvageable versus salvageable items. We're providing recommendations for cleaning, disposal, or specialized restorations of contents as needed, and maintaining a chain of custody and inventory where appropriate, especially for valuable items. Then we move on to mitigation of damaged structure. We're proceeding with water extraction, drying, dehumidification, odor control, or stabilization services following the IICRCS 500 and S 520 standard guidelines. Adjusting the scope and methods to account for limited access and excess contents, which may restrict equipment placement and airflow. We're documenting all conditions in progress in detail for insurance and compliance. This step here is very important because if there are a lot of contents, let's say the customer is not really in a position to have everything packed out and stored in an offsite facility, we'll try to kind of shimmy everything to one side, shimmy everything to another side, meanwhile ensuring the protection of those contents during mitigation. But it is important to note because sometimes the drying process takes longer because our equipment can't do its job as successfully as if it was an open space. Then we move on to communication, documentation, and next steps, maintaining clear, empathetic communication with the property owner throughout the process and setting realistic expectations, providing the insurance adjuster with documentation, showing how hoarding conditions impacted the space, access, and potential costs. We're outlining next steps for reconstruction efforts, contents cleaning, or specialized remediation services. And then we're ensuring the customer understands their role in supporting the ongoing access. For example, just working with the organizers or third-party services if required, basically kind of staging them and setting them up for success. Let's see here. And I've seen you guys have some questions popping in, so I just want to make sure I'm getting these as they're going in. Organize maybe, yep. I know. So sad the individual wasn't close for anybody to check on him. That one in Leisure World. It was really sad. This happened in my building. Luckily, a resident complained that the same music was on repeat and went in to ask them to turn it off and do a wellness check. We found the resident deceased. Kelly, that, and we hear that often. Most of the time, residents in a community, they will see something, say something, right? So that's the ideal situation there where they're able to find him more quickly. How do you work with the property manager and owner as most master policies do not cover contents? That's a really, really good point, Michelle. So I get into that a little bit in the next few slides, but you're correct. Most master policies do not cover content manipulation or content restoration. Those are all based on the individual homeowners policies. So in essence, let's say you have a one unit is the source unit. And unfortunately, in the incidents with this fire here that we're showing, that unit owner was not available to speak with to make any kind of decisions. We worked with the property manager to get all of his next of kin's information and then kind of navigated through insurance that way. And what we did, it was the source units insurance that basically took the bulk of everything as far as scope of work for the remaining units. So I think it was Erie. I'm not going to throw names out there, but the carrier worked with us to determine coverages in that policy. And then they extended coverages to the remaining unit owners that needed a pack out in order to complete mitigation. So it ended up falling on the source unit owner's policy. And then the master policy picked up the mitigation and reconstruction side of things. So they were able to kind of parse that out and subrogate between the carriers. Beautiful. So ICRC standards on heavy contents and hoarding. The Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, Restoration, and Certification Standards, IICRC S500 and S520, note heavy contents handling with an emphasis on health and safety first, using the right specialized PPE for the job. Secure temporary power and or utility resources if needed. Categorizing items unaffected, affected, and non-salvageable. Secure and document packouts. So our main focus is on the biohazards. In cases of severe hoarding, the S540 standard provides best practices for handling biohazardous materials like human or animal waste, decomposing remains, or contaminated items. Safety protocols in place. Certified cleanup technicians are required to assess the scene and use appropriate PPE to safely remove hazardous materials. And then professional standards for ICRC certified biohazard remediation technicians. Cleaning up a hoarding scene involves compassionate and methodical process that ensures safety and restores the dignity of the living space. Does insurance cover this? Standard homeowners or renters insurance often does not provide adequate coverage for high value collections or hoarding. So what does your policy cover? Now, this is just typical language. I have a lot of insurance friends in the industry, and I picked their brains just to get kind of some typical language to share with you guys today. This by no means is in everybody's underwriter, but this is some typical language that you might see. So insurance carriers were typically distinguished between neglect, i.e. failure to maintain the property, and accidental sudden loss or a covered peril. Avid collecting, organized, intentional insured valuables may be acceptable, but hoarding conditions can complicate or even void coverage. Policy condition clauses. Most owners' policies require the property to be maintained and in good condition. Excessive clutter, fire hazards, or unsafe living conditions may be considered failure to maintain premises, a reason insurers can deny claims. Coverage limitations. Damage caused by vermin, rodents, mold, or gradual deterioration is typically excluded. Insurance may cover fire, water, or mold damage, but hoarding can increase denial risk, reduce payout, and lead to liability concerns for neighbors and other units. Contents coverage may be limited or disputed if items are not properly inventoried or documented. So I'll give you guys kind of a little insider knowledge here. We obviously deal with people from all walks of life and all different types of homes and communities. Typically what I've seen from our end, insurance carriers will give people grace and they will cover the majority of costs for restoration and reconstruction. They just do not carry over the contents coverage for these types of customers. Policy language examples for contents coverage and personal property. General coverage. We cover personal property owned or used by an insured while it is anywhere in the world at your request. We will also cover personal property owned by others while it is on the part of the resident's premises occupied by the insured. Special limits of liability. The limit of liability for the loss by theft of jewelry, watches, furs, precious, and semi-precious stones is $1,500. These are just examples. The limit of liability for loss of silverware, goldenware, or peterware is $2,500. So that's a cap. So even if you had $10,000 worth of jewelry in your home, your homeowner's standard policy is going to cap out at about $1,500. The limit of liability for loss of collectibles, trading cards, or memorabilia is $2,500. So this is why collectors are encouraged to purchase scheduled personal property endorsements or writers to insure valuables beyond the standard cap. Most policies don't use the word hoarding, but instead rely on neglect, failure to maintain, and wear and tear exclusions. Common language includes, we do not cover loss resulting from neglect of the insured to use all reasonable means to save and preserve property at and after the time of loss. This policy does not insure against loss caused by wear and tear, deterioration, inherent vice, latent defect, rust, mold, wet or dry rot, contamination, or neglect. We do not cover loss caused by vermin, rodents, insects, or domestic animals. Insurers may deny or reduce claims if they can prove that excess contents, unsafe conditions, or neglect, i.e. hoarding, directly contributed to the severity of the damage. What can I do to ensure my valued collection? Well, special considerations for collectors. Special limits apply to collections of coins, stamps, trading cards, or similar items unless specifically scheduled on the policy. Collections including art, coins, antiques, and memorabilia often require writers or scheduled personal property endorsements to ensure full coverage. Without a writer, coverage is usually capped at low limits, like we just read a couple slides ago, about $2,500 for collectibles, jewelry, or fine art. My pro tip here is to make sure you have your collection appraised either as a collection or as individual items. Share these appraisals with your local insurance agent when reviewing your annual policy review and ask for specific writers that will help ensure your contents coverage. So key takeaways for policyholders, contents are generally covered, but limits apply unless you've scheduled valuables. Avid collecting is insurable, but only if items are documented and listed with your carrier. Hoarding complicates claims. Insurers may use neglect clauses to deny payment if unsafe conditions made the damage worse. Annual policy reviews with a local agent help ensure coverage reflects reality, especially if collections grow or home conditions change. Review your policy annually with your local agent. Ask about specific neglect exclusions and coverage limits for your contents and collections. Maintain updated photos and inventories of valuables. Understand that unsafe hoarding conditions may not just complicate restoration, but it could also impact your claim outcome. Community managers ask about caps and coverages on the master policy for individual unit owners' content coverages. Perform annual inspections and flag fire hazards before they become a disaster. Now I'm going to open this up for questions. I know that was a whole lot that was said, so please feel free, pick my brain. Happy to help. And I will catch up on chat here. I learned that prevention is not key to having a disaster. Hoarding is a health hazard to the owner and can damage other people's units. Yes, it is. It's a very sad thing, and unfortunately, it happens all the time. Just like that fire we were showing you earlier. Those 7 other unit owners were greatly impacted by that one source unit. And the fact that there was a active hazard in his unit with all the contents, it made it much harder for firefighters to put out the blaze. As I understand it, it took them considerable time extra than it should have. And that also affected these other units by, completely drenching them with the firefighters putting everything out. It was so much more saturated than we had seen on a typical fire loss. Hoarding can be organized and still a serious, exactly. I've heard some awful stories where people die from their hoarding, posting on actual physical risk and the renters or owners. Yes. And it's a really scary thing. We just try our best to really give grace and understand, everybody comes from different walks of lives. This is this person in this moment. Let's try to help them and turn their life around. We've had several kind of hero moments here as well where the outcome wasn't bad. It didn't result in death. People come to us and just say, look, this is where I'm at right now. Things really got out of hand, but I'm ready to turn my life around. Can you guys come and help me clean out my house? That's also a service we provide. You don't necessarily have to have a catalyst like a pipe break or a sewage backup or mold for you to get some assistance with taking care of your home. Hoarding is a debilitating mental health issue and should be treated as mental health. Exactly, Derry. Very, very good. So if anybody has any more questions, please feel free, throw them in here, either in the Q&A or the chat. Happy to help. And I'm going to keep moving on because I want to make sure we're being mindful of everybody's time today. In closing, if you suspect you have a property hazard or require assistance with water, fire, smoke, lead, or biohazard damages, give us a call. We're here 24/7 to help with your disaster. 866-818-1949. I'm gonna throw this in here. This is fun. So, you guys all met Dion last month. Anybody who was here for the plumbing coffee break several months back also got to hear it from my colleague, Mr. Dion. He does a YouTube series. It is a quick minute to a minute and a half. He calls it a heads up update. It's basically just to teach people how to prevent different damages in their home. One of his most recent ones was, do you know how to use a shutoff valve? Well, he breaks it down to you in less than a minute and teaches you about the different types of common shutoff valves, how they operate, and how you can access these when you need it. So definitely check it out. Check out our YouTube channel. We've been doing some really great things over there, producing some more video content for you guys. I hope you all get a chance to take advantage of it and you're staying safe in your homes. Now, without further ado, we're going to get into our grand prize drawing time. Let me get my random number generator here and see who my monthly winner is. All right. And congratulations, lucky number 7, Miss Janet Midkiff. I'm very sorry if I butchered your last name, but it looked phonetical. Congratulations, Janet. Let's give you some confetti action here. Gonna get you some confetti action here. There you go. Congratulations, Janet. I will be getting in touch with you here after the coffee break to figure out how I'm gonna get you your Amazon gift card. And I see some people cheated and they've already started answering my question. But for your chance to win a $5 Starbucks gift card, let me know one thing you learned in today's presentation. This is my favorite part because I get to see what everybody's learned. Maintain clear and empathetic communications? Yes. Insurance companies differentiate between accidental loss and neglect? Correct. And Amy, you know better than most. Michelle, disaster response involves homes with a hoarder can be tricky to navigate. Documentation is key in all cases. Yes, ma'am, you are correct. Hoarding differs from collecting. It's disorder to mental illness, and it's also a risk to property and health. Hoarding can make it difficult to exit during an emergency. All exits and pathways should be cleared for safety. Great job, Demi. Oh, you guys are amazing super sleuths, and I truly appreciate you. I hope you all learned something today and got something out of today's presentation. For everything else, we're here for you. Give us a shout. Even if it's just a question, you want to pick our brain, let us know. We're here to be your arm in this industry. Bounce ideas off of us, give us a call and ask us how things work. That's what we're here for. And I do have one question here. How can you remove hoarding items safely if it's a biohazard, say chemical related? So most of the time, Kevin, that ends up in disposal. So we have very specific disposal methods that we use for handling biohazard or chemically affected contents. So and everything just becomes unsalvageable at that point. All right, so thank you all so much. We'll see you next month, last Wednesday of the month, September 24th. Enjoy this beautiful weather, guys. It is so wonderful outside. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining us.